November 1964. Hollywood. A cold evening on the sidewalk outside Grauman's Chinese theater. A man stands against the crowd barrier. His name is Billy Harte. He is 38 years old. He has not slept in 2 days. He is not here for autographs. He is not here for the cameras. He is here because 12 years ago, a pilot named James Stewart flew alongside the men in his crew over Korea, and tonight is the only night Billy Harte has ever been close enough to say thank you. The security guard tells him to step back. Here is the story. Billy Harte grew up in Youngstown, Ohio. His father worked the steel mill, 14-hour shifts, 6 days a week, hands that never came clean. His mother kept the house running on what was left over after the rent. 3 younger brothers who needed feeding. 2 pairs of shoes between them in winter. It was not a hard life, in the way people use that word loosely. It was genuinely hard. The kind of hard that does not announce itself because it does not know any other way. Billy enlisted at 19. Not because he had to. The draft had not yet reached his number. He went because his country was at war on a peninsula most of his classmates could not find on a map. And because he had been raised by people who did not explain their obligations before they met them. He passed the aptitude tests at the top of his intake class. The recruiter told him he had a mechanical mind. He already knew that. He had been rebuilding engines since he was 12. They assigned him to aircraft maintenance. Crew chief, 5th Air Force, stationed in Japan and then rotated forward. His job was deceptively simple to describe. Keep the aircraft flying. Check every rivet, every seal, every fuel line, every hydraulic connection before the pilots climbed in. If a plane came back in one piece after a mission over North Korea, it was partly because of men like Billy Harte. If it did not come back, he carried that too. He carried every one that did not come back. In the winter of 1951, Billy's squadron flew joint exercises alongside a reserve unit that included Brigadier General James Stewart. Stewart was no ceremonial figurehead. He had flown 20 combat missions over Germany in World War II. He had refused every attempt to ground him on account of his fame. He flew the hard assignments. He flew in weather that grounded men half his age. He was 50 miles away from any camera when he did it. Billy never spoke to Stewart directly. He was an enlisted man, maintaining ground equipment when Stewart's aircraft rotated through for servicing. But he watched him. He watched how Stewart moved through the hangars, unhurried, no entourage. He stopped to speak with the mechanics. Not the officers, the mechanics. He asked their names. He looked at their work before he climbed in. In 22 years of watching men, Billy Harte had become an accurate judge of character. Some pilots looked at a maintained aircraft, the way a man looks at a tool, useful until broken. Stewart looked at it, the way a man looks at something that someone else's hands have cared for. With recognition, Billy kept that memory. He did not talk about it. Men from Youngstown did not make a habit of sentiment. But he kept it. He came home in 1953, found a job at a machine shop in Cleveland, married a woman named Carol Myers, who worked the early shift at a diner on Lorraine Avenue. They had 2 children in 4 years. A daughter, Patty, a son, Thomas. For a while, things were manageable. Then the factory closed. Then his knee, injured on a carrier deck in the final months of his service. A fall that had been logged, but not properly documented in the chaos of a drawdown, began to fail him. He filed a disability claim with the VA. The claim was reviewed, flagged for incomplete documentation, and denied. He appealed. The appeal was reviewed by a clerk who had never held a wrench. Denied again. He found other work. Maintenance supervisor at a warehouse complex on the east side of Cleveland. The pay was enough to keep the lights on, barely. Carol picked up extra shifts. Patty and Thomas shared a room. Nobody complained. Complaining was not the family language, but Billy Harte, a man who had kept fighter aircraft in the air over the Korean peninsula, was spending his late 30s trying to convince a government office that the knee that had buckled under him on a rolling carrier deck in November 1951 was in fact a service-connected injury. It was not bitterness that drove him. It was something quieter and more stubborn. a sense that the accounting had been done wrong. The ledger showed a number that did not match what he knew to be true. He heard about the premiere through a friend who worked the valet line at Grauman's. James Stewart would be attending. A film event. Red carpet. The whole performance. Billy bought a Greyhound ticket from Cleveland. He told Carol he was visiting a cousin in Pasadena. He did not like lying to her. He also could not explain, not in words that would satisfy her practical mind. Why it mattered. In his shirt pocket, he carried a photograph. It was a group shot from 1951, the full ground crew. 12 men, lined up in front of a maintenance hangar somewhere in Japan. The Pacific sun was behind the photographer. All 12 of them were squinting. They all looked young, in the way that only photographs make clear. Because when you are that age, you do not know you look young. On the back of the photograph, Billy had written one sentence in pencil. "We kept your plane, in the air." That was all he wanted to hand to Stewart. No speech, no request. No demand for recognition. Just the photograph and the sentence and the handshake, if it came to that. The security guard at Grauman's was a large man who had worked event detail for 11 years. He had heard every story. He had no interest in this one. "Sir, I need you to step back behind the barrier." Billy did not argue. He had not traveled 16 hours to argue with a security guard. He stepped back. He stood. The crowd pressed from behind. He held his position quietly and waited. The way he had learned to wait in hangars at 3 a.m. when a part was delayed. And there was nothing to do but wait. That is when John Wayne arrived. Wayne came through the side entrance, the way he often did at crowded public events, not hiding from it, but not feeding it either. He was wearing a dark wool blazer over a white dress shirt, dark trousers, his hair combed back, moving with that particular walk. Unhurried, in a way that looked slow, until you noticed he was covering ground faster than the men around him. He saw the situation. Before he was close enough to hear any of it, a man in a worn but pressed suit jacket. "A service medal on the lapel!" A security guard with one arm extended. The man not arguing, not pushing, just standing, holding something in his hand. Wayne stopped walking. He said something to the man walking next to him. His publicist, by most accounts. Then he changed direction. He walked to the barrier. "Where are you watching from?" "Drop your state in the comments. I want to see how far this story reaches. What is your name?" Wayne said. The question was addressed to Billy, not to the guard, not to the organizer standing 20 feet away with a clipboard. To Billy. Billy looked up. "Billy Harte," he said. "Where did you serve?" "Korea, 5th Air Force, crew chief." Wayne looked at the guard. He did not raise his voice. He did not argue. He said, "He is with me," in the tone of a man who has already decided how a thing is going to go. The guard hesitated 1 second. He unclipped the barrier. Wayne did not make a scene of it. He did not pose with Billy. He did not call over the photographers. He simply fell into step beside the man and walked them both through the entrance with the same unhurried pace he walked everywhere. Inside, he found a quiet corner near the coat check, away from the flow of people. He turned to face Billy, and he gave him his full attention. Not the partial attention of a famous man doing a favor. His full attention. The kind you give a man when you have decided he is worth it. "Tell me why you are here." Wayne said. Billy told him. The crew. The winter of 1951. The photograph. The one sentence he had traveled 16 hours to deliver, Wayne did not interrupt. He listened the way a man listens when he is actually listening, and not just waiting for the pause that signals it is his turn to speak. When Billy finished, Wayne held out his hand. Billy placed the photograph in it. Wayne looked at it for a long time. 12 young men squinting into the Pacific sun. "How many came back?" He asked. 9. Billy said. Wayne nodded. He kept looking at the photograph. "You took a Greyhound from Cleveland to hand this to him. It was not a question. Bought a ticket." Billy said. "Not a bus driver." The corner of Wayne's mouth moved. "Let me find him," Wayne said. What happened next was not photographed. There were no Hollywood columns covering it that evening. No entertainment reporters had their eyes on the coat check corner. The flashbulbs were pointed toward the main entrance, toward the faces the cameras already knew. Nobody was watching Billy Harte. Nobody was watching the man in the worn jacket standing near the exit, while the room filled with noise and light. But several people remember seeing John Wayne and James Stewart in a hallway behind the main lobby for roughly 15 minutes that night. Not talking the way famous men talk at public events. One eye on the room, body angled toward the exit, half their attention already somewhere else, standing still, facing each other, looking at a photograph. One of Wayne's production assistants, who spoke about it years later, said he saw Stewart take the photograph in both hands. Not one hand, the way you accept something being passed to you. Both hands. The way you receive something, I remember every crew, Stewart told Billy. Every crew I ever flew with, he meant it. Everyone who knew James Stewart knew he meant it. Have you ever had someone finally understand what you went through? That moment changes everything. Does it not? Wayne could have left it there. He had done the gesture. He had gotten a man through the door. He had made an introduction. That would have been impossible without him. He had given one tired man from Cleveland the moment he had traveled 16 hours for. Most men would have considered the account settled. Wayne did not consider it settled. The following Monday, a call was placed to the property department at Republic Pictures. The details of what was said in that call were never recorded. But within the week, Billy Harte received a letter offering him a position as senior equipment supervisor. A role that drew directly on his aircraft maintenance experience, required no formal review process, and paid considerably more than anything he had earned in Ohio. The letter did not mention John Wayne's name. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived at the VA regional office in Cleveland. It was typed on plain stationery. It was signed at the bottom, in handwriting that the clerk would later say she recognized immediately. It stated, with the directness of a man who did not consider indirectness a virtue, that one, William Harte, had served his country in the Korean theater with distinction, that his service-connected injury had been improperly reviewed on documentation grounds, and that the writer intended to follow the outcome. Of the appeal personally, the VA reviewed the claim a third, and it was approved in 43 days. Billy. Harte moved his family to Los Angeles that spring. His children grew up by the Pacific. Patty became a nurse. Thomas enlisted in the Air Force and served 11 years. Carol stopped working the early diner shift. Billy worked at Republic Pictures for 11 years. He was known for two things among the crew. He was always the first one in, and he was always the last one out. And he fixed things before anyone noticed they were broken. He was not a man who told stories. He did not speak publicly about Wayne, or about Stewart, or about the night at Grauman's. If someone asked him how he had found his way to Republic Pictures, he said he knew a man who knew a man. He kept the photograph, he kept the letter, he folded the letter and placed it in his wallet, behind the photograph, where it stayed for the rest of his life. In 2003, nearly 4 decades later, a donation arrived at the Korean War Veterans Memorial Foundation in Washington, D.C.A. framed piece. 2 items mounted together. The first was a letter, handwritten, dated November 1964. Written on John Wayne's personal stationery, and addressed to one William Billy Harte of Cleveland, Ohio, it read, "In the straightforward language of a man who did not perform generosity, a man who served this country deserves to be heard. I will see to it." The second item, mounted below the letter, was the group photograph. 12 young men in front of a maintenance hangar somewhere in Japan, squinting into the Pacific sun. On the back, in pencil, in handwriting that had not changed in 50 years. "We kept your plane." In the air, the accompanying note from Billy's family said that their father had carried the letter folded in his wallet for 39 years. He had never shown it to anyone outside the family. He had not considered it something that required displaying. He had considered it a private accounting between himself and a man who had seen a debt and paid it. Billy Harte passed away in 2001. He was 75 years old. His son Thomas agreed to the memorial donation because, as he wrote in the accompanying letter, his father would have liked knowing that other veterans could see it. Not because of who had written it, but because of what it said. The letter has been displayed at the Memorial Foundation ever since. That is the kind of man John Wayne was, not in front of the cameras. Not with a speech written for him. Not in a moment that was designed to be remembered. In a coat-check corner. On a cold November evening, when a man nobody was watching needed someone to see him, he made one call. He wrote one letter. He changed 4 lives without ever asking to be thanked for it. He could have walked past that barrier. He could have kept moving at that same unhurried pace toward the entrance. Nobody would have noticed. Nobody was watching, he noticed. That was the difference. If this story reached you, do me a favor. Pass it on. Share it with a veteran in your life. Hit that subscribe button if you have not yet. There are more Duke stories coming, and unfortunately, they do not make men like John Wayne anymore.